Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel, and today I'm flying solo, and I want to talk to you guys about something that has been, on my mind of late, mainly because I keep hearing about it, and that's often what happens to me is, you let the universe speak to you, and when you start to listen, you start hearing the same things over and over and over again, and when that happens, I need to talk to you guys about it. Now, in this case, the word that keeps coming up again and again, or the concept that keeps coming up, is expansion. And more specifically, is our purpose to expand, right? Is our purpose here to expand? I talk a lot about purpose, I think, almost tangentially on the different episodes I've had so far. In one in particular, though, with Andrew Ramirez, purpose was one of the real kind of main topics of our chat. And Andrew talked about how his purpose is to expand. And that got me thinking a little bit more about what expansion really is. I mean, it kind of sounds almost like, blob, where you're just this kind of rampant expanding thing that just exists to grow and almost indiscriminately and take over everything around you. And I just want to be very clear that that's not at all what I had in mind about expansion. And when I think about it a little bit more deeply, it feels like we are all in a, relatively fixed space. You've got all the different aspects of your life. You've got your family, you've got your work, you've got your hobbies, whatever clubs you belong to, whatever your social circles look like. And over time, it kind of takes on a shape, whether that's a fenced-in, fixed shape that's really kind of, doesn't really allow much movement within it or around it, or if it's kind of amorphous. It still kind of feels like it has borders and you're in your little world. But I think that at any given time, in any part of that shape of yours or any part of that universe, can change and alter such that suddenly you've got a little bit more room, and it's not typically by subtraction, but by addition. So, in a very physical way, I mean, let's take the very easiest example I could think of. You're in your office, as I am right now, and you notice that your desk is all cluttered with all kinds of books and pens and, notebooks and computers and all kinds of crap. In my case, there's a microphone on it and there's mice, not like literally, animals mice, like computer mice, because I have two computers on my desk right now. And I've got my work stuff, I've got my personal stuff, I've got my phone, I've got, two other phones. Man, I mean, just the amount of clutter and the amount of crap on this desk is out of control. So I got the idea that, rather than clean up my desk, which would be too easy, and make some room, I got the idea that, what I really need? I need another desk. So, I was tired of being cramped. You're in the same room. I mean, let's just digress here for a second, because you're in the same room all the time, day in, day out, especially nowadays where we find ourselves working from home and looking at the same desk and the same, clutter, surrounded by the same walls all the time. It is just frankly monotonous. And, look, if you have the opportunity to make a change every now and then, I highly recommend it. Just do something. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to get new stuff, but to, make a rearrangement, shift some books around, do something, make something different. But anyway, in my case, I was looking at this mess I had on my desk, and I thought, what, I could really use comfort. I could use some comfort, and comfort really here in this case means space. So I got another desk, more of a table, to be frank. It's very featureless, but it's a big flat, surface that when it arrived and I pulled it out of the box and, took the Allen wrenches out and put it together as per the instructions from China, I had a nice, beautiful space now to fill. It took about 30 seconds to fill it. I mean, yes, I was able to clean the desk or at least declutter my original desk. And now with this addition of my second desk, I now have quite a bit more space to work with. And it's definitely more comfortable. Kind of feel like I'm in a command center. I can turn one way or the other and, have my work stuff on one side, my personal stuff on the other. I was able to separate those things a bit. But, the fact is that I added this desk and immediately filled it up. There's still a little bit of room, but for the most part, I have most of the square footage, is that right, on the surface accounted for. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like what I did here. I have a different angle on the world. I feel like I'm walking into a slightly new office every morning now, and I think that it is having a positive effect on my not only my attitude and my morale, but also my productivity. And hey, check. Those are all great reasons to just kind of rearrange or even put in a new desk. But the point is that I got this new area, and I immediately was able to fill it. And I thought to myself that it's amazing. It doesn't matter how much space you have. You're going to move into it, right? You move from a small house to a big house or a bigger house, and the furniture you had in the new house looks a little sparse. What happens within a very short amount of time? Your new house is all cluttered up. You get a new kitchen done, new countertops, they're nice and clear. You vow before you get those new countertops put in, you make this vow like, okay, next time that blender is not going to be sitting on the counter. We're going to have a place for it. Well, guess what? New kitchen. There's not only the new blender, but now you have some other companion appliance, bread maker or some nonsense such thing, sitting next to it, adding to what you had because, you have the space now to do it. So these are all like very material, physical ways, very literal ways of looking at expanding into new space. But the point is that if you have space into which you can expand, you will. So we expand, and here's the point that I kind of came up with. We expand to fill the space we have, the space we're given, or the space that we acquire. So we expand to fill the space we have, the space we're given, or the space that we acquire. Now when we move beyond the physical space and we get into, what kind of space are we talking about? What does expansion look like in a much more metaphorical way, mentally or, metaphysically? Then we're really getting into some interesting concepts, I think. I mean, let's take one of the more, one of the ones that came up in my conversations recently, professionally. What does expansion look like from a professional standpoint? I mean, you may think that this falls under the area of given space, especially if you're an employee, if you have a day job, just like I do. How do you expand? How do you get that, fulfill your purpose to expand if you are, if you have a fixed job description? I mean, the fact is that you're never fixed in one spot in your job, really. I mean, I suppose that the argument can be made that there are plenty of workers actually out there who are, doing certain tasks on a daily basis, and they have to stick within exactly what they're given and do nothing more than that. But I would argue that even those roles, those critical roles, have room for expansion. And here's how: you expand by performing well. You perform well, you get you get your own confidence, and you gain the confidence of those around you. And you start to see that the job that you do can be done quicker or differently. You find new ways, you find interesting ways to complete the tasks around you figure you can save a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there in one sense, or you can completely revamp what you do and save a lot more time. So you expand by saving time, and now you have space again into which you can grow, or you deliver something that is so good that your leadership or your employer appreciates your effort, not only by giving you a couple of attaboys, but also by asking you to do more, giving you the opportunity to grow into an expanded role. You might think that that's given, but it's not. It's actually, I would call that acquired space. And it's that acquired space that you gain as the result of your own sweat, your own tears, your own blood. I had to finish the triumvirate there. Your own blood, sweat, and tears. That is probably the most rewarding, but also, that gives you that immediacy of, geez, now I've come this far and I can go further, and I'm reaping the rewards that I've sown. So, anyway, you free up some space, and you're able to grow into it and to fill it. And you will, because we all will fill the space that we have, receive, or acquire. We fill the space that we have, receive, or acquire. So what happens when you don't have any space into which you can expand? You've neither been given anything, or you haven't acquired any new space. What happens when you're confined or you're stuck? It's a tough spot to be in. And I think it happens to all of us. It's just a matter of recognizing when that happens. And in my case, I always know it. Like, I know it's happening because the air itself feels heavy. Things feel oppressive around me. It feels like there's something, like I'm on the edge of something. I'm about to kind of cross into something different or interesting or new. But at the same time, there's a pressure in the air weighing down on me. And, either it's hard to make that step forward or that step to the side. It's whatever the reason is, I'm at that point. It's like an inflection point where a decision needs to be made, something needs to be done. And I recognize that it's the time because of all that ambient pressure. I guess in a sense, it's like, what happens to a reptile when it needs to molt? What happens to a shellfish when it needs to grow? It must feel almost anguish in its own skin that starts to get too tight for it, and gets uneasy until it finally is able to move itself enough and wriggle itself free and grow a whole new skin, or shed the old skin and grow a whole new skin. And that gives it that room to now kind of breathe a little more and expand. So I think that's what's happening when we reach these points in our lives, is we're getting ready to molt in some way. So my case recently it hasn't been any different. This situation where that most of us are in, where we're working from home, and there are serious things happening in the world around us. And we're fortunate. I know I'm very fortunate to have an excellent job, but still wake up in the morning. I don't have to go to an office. I'm not traveling. Maybe it's because I have a lot more time to think and consider what's happening around me and in my life. My mind starts to turn to purpose, or it starts to turn to, okay, I'm going to be able to do what I'm supposed to do for my employer, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. But there's something more. I need to do something more. So I've been feeling that a lot in an increasing way especially since the COVID-19 situation started. And my response was to start to look at all of the things that I had been thinking about that had remained undone. I've talked about this before. I had this microphone sitting hanging near my desk on its extended arm, and I've been looking at it for nearly 2 years. So, I figured, okay, now it's time to turn that thing on and actually start talking. And of course, I didn't do that by myself. I had some help, and thanks, Cliff, and so on. But the point is that as soon as I started talking, or as soon as turned that mic on and started to record my thoughts for public consumption, as it is, I started to feel that, I guess, that old skin breaking off, and I started to feel a little room to move my shoulders, and the air was suddenly a little less oppressive. And it's that creation, it's that act of creation in some ways, but it's also just the fact that I'm doing something different and new, and what I hope is going to be quite meaningful, certainly meaningful to me, but I hope it reaches others and is meaningful to other folks out there. You know, Serving others, helping others in this way has in some ways really expanded my view and has given me room to grow. And again, this is a new space, this podcast that I acquired, into which I can expand. And it didn't end there. I started writing again, something I haven't done in years and years. And now, in the mornings I'll sit down and write. And I realized that my day was getting really packed up even before I started to work, or I started my job for my employer. And I certainly don't want to impinge on that. So, because I like my job, but I figured that that the only way now to complete what I needed to complete was to expand my day. But there's only 24 hours in a day, right? So how could I expand the day? I could expand the day just by waking up earlier and acquiring a whole nother hour. Yes, it's true, I would lose an hour on the other side, or I would be able to I'd have to cut something because, unfortunately, as much as we'd like to think in terms of abundance, that it's not a zero-sum game, there are only 24 hours in the day. That's not going to change. So anyway, but I had to expand my day by waking up earlier and literally adding more time to the time that's available to me to do my work and so on. But anyway, totally worth it. Exercising my creative muscles and expanding in that way. So, I turned on the microphone. I got the software going. I got the headphones. I got all the accoutrement and a small dose of will and a little bit of bravery, I suppose. And that gave me the space that I needed to expand into. Now I think I would be remiss if I didn't think about how I can take this concept of expansion and apply it to the world of marketing and PR and that professional world that I live in and that many of you live in as well. Honestly, I'd probably apply the concept of expansion the same way to any profession or any role out there. And that is that, when it's time to expand, or, if you should always be thinking of ways to expand, you should probably start with the place that is the easiest for you to control, and that is your mind. A little bit cliche, but, hey, read a book. Pick up some books, expand your knowledge. Nothing can stop you from expanding your knowledge, and that, I think, is a great starting point to get into this whole mindset of expansion. I could go into abundance as well, and I know that some of you out there are probably going to ping me on that. Developing an abundance mentality where that it's not a zero-sum game out there. There's plenty of knowledge. There's plenty of reward out there for everybody, and to get it for yourself is part of this whole, or is maybe the result of expansion. And you can expand by networking, by meeting other people. Whether or not, you're an introvert or an extrovert, it doesn't really matter. There are so many tools available to you now that for you to expand your network, for you to look outside of your current set of acquaintances and contacts and start to look around for, first maybe new content, people who are writing things that you're interested in, people who are looking at the same kinds of things that you're looking at, maybe people in groups and in clubs. Start there and connect with people. And slowly but surely, your exposure to others is going to, expose you to others. It's going to give you more opinions, more ideas and more ways to apply those things to, if you're a marketer or if you're a welder, to your job and to your life, that will help you expand your role and help you kind of come to grips with maybe that pressure that you're feeling, if you are indeed feeling that, like I have, of that, hey, it's time to expand. And I guess a subset of the networking thing, or a result of that, probably is the third recommendations that I would make, and that is find a mentor or a coach, or both. But somebody who understands how you work and the workings of your mind, and can see that when you're struggling to kind of move in a certain direction, or can see when you are, you've got something right in front of you, and help you kind of find out what that is, to see that step that you need to take to break yourself out of that funk, out of that miasma that you're sitting in, that pressure, that somehow you need to take a step. You don't know what it is, but it's there. So somebody else, a coach or a mentor, would be probably a good person to point you in the right direction and show you ways that you can expand that you can't see for yourself. Because frankly, you just don't have, most of the time, the objectivity to look at yourself that clearly and say, okay, this is where I'm stuck. This is where I need to move forward. I'm going to do this all on my own. Hey, if you could do that, great. But oftentimes, having a helping hand in the form of a coach or a mentor is a real bonus. I guess before I go, I do want to touch on maybe the dark side of this concept, that you will grow into whatever space you're given, or whatever space you acquire. And I don't mean the dark side in that clutter is just going to expand and grow and you'll just be more cluttered. I mean, I guess metaphorically that's true, but or it could be true. But I don't mean the downside of having another desk and creating even more surface area for you to clean. But I do mean, I guess it's related. I mean the idea that what you do to fill that space, isn't automatically good. And that is something that I think we need to be careful of. If you suddenly find yourself with time on your hands, yes, you will expand to fill that time. But are you going to expand by watching more Netflix? Or are you going to expand by reading more books to improve your knowledge? Or are you going to expand by reading novels? Or are you going to expand by reading, the chosen books of your profession, if that's what you need to do? So remember, the temptations to do things that aren't necessarily in your best interest are still going to be out there as you expand. Or one other way to think about the dark side of this whole expand to fill concept. What if you're at work, or you have a client, and you have a certain amount of budget and expectation to fill time, or to produce a certain number of activities? Look, especially I can speak for marketers and communicators here, that you've got a certain amount of time, the same amount of time that everybody else has, except you have a certain goals to meet, and you create activities and activity plan to meet those goals. But what happens when there's dead time? When there's dead time, do you try to absorb the silence and use it as an opportunity to listen, and to hear what your customers are saying, or to kind of take a little bit of time for introspection? Or do you do whatever you can to fill up every single moment with activity, because maybe you feel like that's what you need to do, or you feel like there's a fear that you're going to be seen as complacent. For whatever reason, you feel like you need to keep everything going at a pace that may not be right for the company that you're working for. It may not be right for your customer or for your client. But the point is that it's important to choose the way that you fill the space that you're given, because you're going to fill it one way or another. And on that note, I just want to thank you for indulging me on this solo episode. Thanks for tuning in as always. I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on this whole concept of expansion. If I got it right, if I got it wrong, if you agree or disagree, please do feel free to get in touch and let me know. You can reach me by email at dan@danielnestle.com. That's DAN at Mark, DANIELNESTLE.com. You can reach me on LinkedIn. Just search for me on LinkedIn, Daniel Nestle, or on Twitter at DSNestle. That's DSNESTLE. And I will get back to you if you do decide that you feel like reaching out. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next week. If you enjoyed this episode of The Dan Nestle Show, please head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the podcast player of your choice to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And please don't forget to spread the word. Thanks for listening.